Today I'm reading Prologue Section 3 of Thus Spake Zarathustra. After the reading, I'll give a short summary and share my interpretation. Zarathustra arrived at the nearest town, which adjoineth the forest. He found many people assembled in the marketplace, for it had been announced that a rope dancer would give a performance. And Zarathustra spake thus unto the people: I teach you the Superman. Man is something that is to be surpassed. What have ye done to surpass man? All beings hitherto have created something beyond themselves, and ye want to be the ebb of that great tide, and would rather go back to the beast than surpass man? What is the ape to man? A laughingstock, a thing of shame, and just the same shall man be to the Superman, a laughingstock, a thing of shame. Ye have made your way from the worm to man, and much within you is still worm. Once were ye apes, and even yet man is more of an ape than any of the apes. Even the wisest among you is only a disharmony and hybrid of plant and phantom. But do I bid you become phantoms or plants? Lo, I teach you the Superman. The Superman is the meaning of the earth. Let your will say the Superman shall be the meaning of the earth. I conjure you, my brethren, remain true to the earth, and believe not those who speak unto you of super-earthly hopes. Poisoners are they, whether they know it or not. Despisers of the earth are they, decaying ones and poisoned ones themselves, of whom the earth is weary, so away with them. Once blasphemy against God was the greatest blasphemy, but God died, and therewith also those blasphemers. To blaspheme the earth is now the deadliest sin, and to rate the heart of the unknowable higher than the meaning of the earth. Once the soul looked contemptuously on the body, and then that contempt was the supreme thing. The soul wished the body meager, ghastly, and famished. Thus it thought to escape from the body and the earth. Oh, that soul was itself meager, ghastly, and famished, and cruelty was the delight of that soul. But ye also, my brethren, tell me, what doth your body say about your soul? Is your soul not poverty and pollution and wretched self-complacency? Verily, a polluted stream is man. One must be a sea to receive a polluted stream without becoming impure. Lo, I teach you the Superman. He is that sea. In him can your great contempt be submerged. What is the greatest thing ye can experience? It is the hour of great contempt, the hour in which even your happiness becometh loathsome unto you, and so also your reason and virtue. The hour when ye say, what good is my happiness? It is poverty and pollution and wretched self-complacency. But my happiness should justify existence itself. The hour when ye say, what good is my reason? Doth it long for knowledge as the lion for his food? It is poverty and pollution and wretched self-complacency. The hour when ye say, what good is my virtue? As yet it hath not made me passionate. How weary I am of my good and my bad. It is all poverty and pollution and wretched self-complacency. The hour when ye say, what good is my justice? I do not see that I am fervor and fuel. The just, however, are fervor and fuel. The hour when ye say, what good is my pity? Is not pity the cross on which he is nailed who loveth man? But my pity is not a crucifixion. Have ye ever spoken thus? Have ye ever cried thus? Ah, would that I had heard you crying thus. It is not your sin. It is your self-satisfaction that crieth unto heaven. Your very sparingness in the sin crieth unto heaven. Where is the lightning to lick you with its tongue? Where is the frenzy with which ye should be inoculated? Lo, I teach you the Superman. He is that lightning. He is that frenzy. When Zarathustra had thus spoken, one of the people called out, "We have now heard enough of the rope dancer. It is time now for us to see him." And all the people laughed at Zarathustra. But the rope dancer, who thought the words applied to him, began his performance. So we open section 3 of the prologue with Zarathustra arriving at the nearest town where people are gathered in the marketplace awaiting a performance from a rope dancer, which is akin to something like an aerialist performance that we could see today. What he does is he shares his enlightened analysis on life and death and why we die and whether it's worthwhile to behold an intangible or tangible God figure. And in the end, it's clear that no one in this town really took him seriously or in earnest. He kind of just randomly showed up and they don't know him. It's like, who's this dude? Let's jump into the analysis. So we begin in this first paragraph, once again alluding to the very title of this text. You can see the very last line here says, "And Zarathustra spake thus unto the people." And he immediately launches into, "I teach you the Superman," all caps. And if we're talking purely rhetorical strategy, I'd have to say Zarathustra hasn't quite found his persuasive voice yet. To be fair, upon his arrival, he immediately launches into this kind of quasi-monastic monologue. And by quasi-monastic, I mean a lifestyle or someone who partially resembles a monastery, by adopting some monastic practices, like in the way that he retreated and went to think. However, he's not a believer in God because he's asserting that God is dead. So I put the quasi in there because he's not actually monastic, but he is taking on some of the behaviors of someone who is monastic. So yeah, he's giving this kind of quasi-monastic monologue to these people who don't know him and who he doesn't know either. Specifically, the way that "I teach you the Superman" kind of read for me, it's like an abrasive line of code, very direct and to the point. Like, okay, you must do this in order for this outcome to happen. Like, I'm gonna teach you the Superman, okay? I'm gonna do it. I feel like a less abrasive question would have maybe helped him out here in conveying his message. And as I was reflecting on this, I was thinking, maybe this is Nietzsche's way, creatively, of making this argument to us. Conveying the benefit of knowing your audience and timing, also known as kairos in ancient Greek, the idea of the opportune or the right moment. That word is used often in literary analysis as one way to judge the strength of an argument. There's ethos, logos, pathos. Ethos, ethics, credibility. Logos, logic, facts. Pathos, the emotional appeal. And then there's also kairos, which is timeliness. So there's so much. You could argue everything in life is about timing. You can have all the right ingredients, but no one to sell the cake to. And I think that's kind of what's happening here, according to the narrator. How we communicate matters and rhetorical context matters. To analyze the two bookends of this passage, I want to jump to the last paragraph because I think it ties in really sweetly with this point I'm making. And I'm just going to read it for you right now. "When Zarathustra had thus spoken, one of the people called out, 'We have now heard enough of the rope dancer. It is time now for us to see him.' And all the people laughed at Zarathustra, but the rope dancer, who thought the words applied to him, began his performance." So all of this impassioned speech really came across as a big joke to this community for all the reasons that we just talked about. And that's really confirming that thesis, I think. So, on to the next. Although Zarathustra is arguably flawed in his approach to delivering his message, I do think there is textual evidence that supports that he's aware of the importance of rhetoric and persuasion. Rhetoric/persuasion. Rhetoric is persuasion. He does open with a rhetorical question in a lot of ways. I think in his mind it's an obvious rhetorical question, but to his audience it's kind of, I think it comes across as flippant a little bit. And that question is, man is something that is to be surpassed. What have ye done to surpass man? And that's him leading up to his ultimate point of, in the stages of evolution, he's arguing that we've plateaued as humanity. He goes on to use a lot of negative imagery around this idea of plateau and kind of begs the question, okay, what makes man more quote-unquote shameful and composed of wretched self-complacency? We've grown stagnant and complacent in the self. And he's coming from this place of classification, phylum, genus, species, that type of thing, where mankind thinks we've reached peak classification, maybe, but he's arguing there's something more above this, the Superman, which is connected to Mother Earth and this tangible entity that we live on, breathe on, walk on every day is what we should be worshiping. He doesn't use the word worshiping, but that's the word that comes to mind for me. We should be worshiping this tangible entity rather than an intangible entity of God. Hence, quote-unquote, God is dead. Yeah, he really exalts this community of people to embrace the physical earth as their true north. And we see this when he says, quote, remain true to the earth and believe not those who speak unto you of super earthly hopes. So the language here is really powerful. Super earthly, more than earth. He's very clearly grappled with the idea of death and has thusly concluded the soul is an evil, wretched thing that begets the death of the earthly body. So there's this real battle duking it out between the soul and the human body. And he kind of reaches this conclusion that therefore the soul is not something to worship or mystify, but something to abhor. And he even uses language like, I conjure you, my brethren, which is another it kind of dips into both worlds, where it's like, okay, his brethren have been lost to the intangible, and he needs to resurrect them. He needs to literally dig them out of the ground and redirect them in what he sees as the right direction, which is, quote unquote, remain true to the earth. At the top of the second page here, we see more of this oppositional language where he says, quote, despisers of life are they, decaying ones and poisoned ones themselves, of whom the earth is weary, so away with them. He's really asking, why rate something you can't see above that which you can see and touch and hold and believe? We get to see a lot of his thought process in this big impassioned monologue that he gives this community. Lots of repetition, which can be really powerful in a persuasive sense, but I think the repetition works when you have the audience captive. If you don't have the audience captive, I think it's much more difficult to get over that barrier with repetition. I think there's other rhetorical tools that are far more successful at achieving, captivating the audience. There's getting the audience, and then once the audience is there, keeping them engaged, type of thing. So I think if he had an engaged audience, which he does in us, the reader, this would be very powerful. So I think it is very powerful, this repetition of the hour when ye say. We see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5, the hour when ye say, what good is my happiness? What good is my reason? What good is my virtue? What good is my justice? What good is my pity? And these are all very moralistic ideas of humanity. They're a bunch of intangibles. His argument is, what good are these things if our body is polluted by this idea of a super earthly, why go for the super earthly when we can have Superman type of thing? Wouldn't we want to first accomplish Superman, figure out how to become a Superman, rather than, in his opinion, give up on life because that's just the way it is, and foster this belief in, okay, well, we can't live forever, we can't live longer, or whatever his ultimate argument is. Therefore, there must be something more after this. Okay, cool. Let's move on. I think that's his argument. Like, why are you just moving on from this? Can't you see that there's potential for more here, right now, in this earthly plane? So it's an interesting argument, in my opinion. I pull that opinion myself from his language of self-complacency. He's really driving home self-complacency as a big issue. We even see him bring the ocean metaphor that we've kind of been coming back to over the last two readings as a metaphor for this Superman, because the ocean is large enough to basically distill all of the impurity, as he calls it, in humanity. The close reading of that is where he says, "Lo, I teach you the Superman. He is that sea. In him can your great contempt be submerged." And submerged here is an interesting word, because he didn't say like diffused or distilled, like to spread out and essentially dissolve. Dissolve might have been a good word. He says submerged, so that makes me wonder, is it ever truly gone? Is that great contempt, as he calls it, are we ever really able to get rid of that fully? Or does the Superman kind of like, maybe it's like real Superman, where it's our kryptonite, where we can live with it, but it weakens us. We're still Superman, but we're a little bit weaker. Or is it red kryptonite? I don't know. Let's see. What do you think? Is this submerged great contempt more like red kryptonite or, regular kryptonite? What do you think? I haven't landed either way. The key idea that I'm walking away with from this part of the reading is that inner battle within Zarathustra and the ultimate resolution between the tangible and the intangible. I think he really logic sequenced his way into this belief, and that's why he's so passionate about it. And I could imagine that one reason why he maybe neglects part of the rhetorical strategy here is because he feels the argument is so strong it speaks for itself, which, is a great ideal to have, but how often does that really happen? I think you could have the greatest idea, like let's just say there's the Platonic form, to pull back from yesterday, of a great idea, like it's the greatest idea ever. I would still argue that if you don't present the strategies of a good rhetorical argument in your delivery, that it's going to be really hard for people to take it in, because I don't know if ideas can necessarily speak for themselves. But what do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts. If you want to expand on anything that I brought up on this section of the reading, I'd love to hear about your ideas and thoughts and anything related to this in the comments below. Thanks so much for reading with me, and I'll see you tomorrow for section 4.